Chagas disease is a chronic inflammatory infectious disease caused by the parasite Trypanosoma cruzi, which is transmitted by a kissing bug. Chagas disease is common in rural areas in South America, Central America, and Mexico. In countrywide surveys done in the 1980s, 100 million people, 25% of all inhabitants of Latin America, were estimated to be at risk of infection, and 17.4 million were infected in 18 endemic countries in 1980 through 1985. According to estimates by the Pan American Health Organization, 20% of Latin America's population were at risk, meaning 109 million individuals, and nearly 7.7 million individuals were infected in 2005. The recent influx of immigrants from countries endemic for disease has meant that Chagas disease is becoming an important health issue in the USA and Canada and in many parts of Europe and the Western Pacific, where an increasing number of infected individuals has been identified as well. The most common destination for migrants from Latin America and the US were an estimated 300,167 individuals, mainly from Mexico, are infected with T. cruzi.
According to CDC, the protozoan parasite Trypanosoma cruzi is the causative agent of Chagas disease, which is a zoonotic disease that can be transferred to humans by blood-sucking kissing bugs. The life cycle of Chagas disease begins with the infected kissing bug taking a blood meal and releasing trypanostigotes in its feces near the site of the bite wound. Trypanostigotes then enter the host through the wound. Inside the host, the trypanostigotes invade cells near the site of inoculation, where they differentiate into intracellular amastigotes. The amastigotes multiply by binary fusion and differentiate into trypanostigotes, and then are released into circulation as bloodstream trypanozygotes. Trypanozygotes infect cells from a variety of tissues and transform into intracellular amastigotes in new infection sites. Clinical manifestations can result from this infective cycle. The bloodstream trypanostigotes do not replicate. Replication resumes only when the parasite enters another cell or are ingested by another vector. The kissing bug becomes infected by feeding on human or animal blood that contains circular parasites. The ingested trypanostigotes transform into epimastigotes in the vector's midgut. The parasites multiply and differentiate in the midgut and differentiate into infective metacyclic trypanostigotes in the hindgut. In this cycle, the kissing bug is the intermediate host and goes through asexual reproduction. The kissing bug is also the arthropod and biological vector. The human is the definitive host and goes through sexual reproduction.
Symptoms of Chagas disease include swelling at infectious site, fever, fatigue, nausea, rash, body ache, eyelid swelling, headache, loss of appetite, diarrhea, vomiting, swollen glands, and enlargement of liver or spleen. Here's a case study of Chagas disease that we found about a woman named Bertha who lived in La Paz, Bolivia. Her medical history provides insight into the effects of Chagas. She suffers from chronic heart ailments from Chagas disease. As a child living in the 1930s, she was bitten by vinchucas and infected with T. cruzi when she lived in Tupiza, a small rural village in Bolivia. She later married and bore 4 daughters. In 1960, she moved to La Paz after her husband abandoned the family. She made a living by sewing for wealthy people, but in 1974, she was diagnosed with Chagas disease. She tells the story of her life and how she copes with Chagas. Until she was 44, she was healthy, going up and down the hills of La Paz to do her sewing. In 1974, she felt fatigue. She began to get a swollen throat and spit blood. She didn't know what it was. She had no idea it had to do with the vinchucas bites years before. She would get tired, fatigued, and experience dizzy and fainting spells. She continued to do her sewing, though she sometimes would faint while she was working. The fainting spells continued for a year. The next year, her fainting got more severe and she eventually suffered a stroke. Her children took her to a doctor who hospitalized her. She underwent testing, xenodiagnosis that indicated she had Chagas disease. X-rays showed that she didn't suffer from cardiomegaly, which is an enlarged heart, but that she probably had lesions in her heart's electric system. These were caused by T. cruzi, amastigotes, being incised in her cardiac tissue. This condition can be fatal. Two of Bertha's daughters also suffer from heart problems. The eldest daughter was born with heart trouble and is also fatigued. After Bertha learned that Chagas can be transmitted congenitally, she encouraged her daughters to undergo testing. The eldest daughter refused the testing because some tests are irritating. Other serological tests, such as ELISA immunosorbent, are available and involve the mere drawing of blood. The other daughter was tested by xenodiagnosis and has tachycardia, which is a rapid beating heart.
Treatment for Chagas disease varies on the type of infection. However, it is urgent that patients seek treatment immediately to prevent a decrease in efficacy of the medicine. For patients who suffer from acute Chagas disease and those who the infection is immunosuppression, meaning it has been reactivated, prescribed benzonidazole and nifurtimox helps ameliorate the disease. These medications are also 100% effective and can completely cure Chagas disease. These medications also help infants with congenital infection and patients during the early chronic phase. Patients who are in the late chronic phase of the disease require additional lifelong medical treatment as cardiac and digestive manifestations occur. Prevention for Chagas disease. In endemic areas of Mexico, Central America, and South America, improved housing and spraying insecticide inside housing to eliminate triatomine bugs has significantly decreased the spread of Chagas disease. Further, screening of blood donations for Chagas is another important public health tool in helping to prevent transfusion-acquired disease. Early detection and treatment of new cases, including mother-to-baby congenital cases, will also help reduce the burden of disease. In the United States and in other regions where Chagas disease is now found but not endemic, control strategies are focused on preventing transmission from blood transfusion, organ transplantation, and mother-to-baby.